For those who can understand this, Lushana Tova, Happy New Year. Today's New Year's. And so having kind of a holiday here. And think of this not as work, but as a fun time, a social time, a time of interaction, but also a time to reflect and to think deeply. I mean, I care a lot about Romania, and have been giving talks, particularly at these Code Camp conferences, urging people to stop being the new India. I want you to get into product. Now, I'm kind of going to explore the other side of this today. And usually I've been talking about, moving out of the process world into the product world. Because a lot of you are just, involved in outsourcing. And the real investment money goes back to the U.S. or Western Europe or something like that. I mean, the revenues stay here, and it helps the cash flow society. So I think there should be more focus on product. But today I'm actually going to talk about the other side of that coin. And the reason I'm doing that is there's this new fad coming over the horizon. It's not a fad yet, but it's probably going to be coming here. And the reason is, there's some smart people behind it and some good people behind it. But I think there's a lot of things I don't appreciate, I don't understand, and I think that are misguided. And so I kind of want to nip this in the bud. And it's called product-led development. And so this is a group of people who are kind of disillusioned with the fact that process is taking over the world. And I think the worst example is SAFe. I mean, SAFe is the most ridiculous thing, that a manager has ever brought in the door. How many of you are managers? How many of you have brought SAFe in the door? Who's willing to admit it, right? I mean, it's a wonderful marketing thing because, Agile has always appealed to the developers and solves their real problems. And this was great in the early days of Agile when the consultants could go out and the developers could convince managers to bring them in. But now the big dumb companies are starting to adopt Agile, and the ones who are paying for this and making the decisions are the managers. So you have to sell to managers, and that's what SAFe is about. It's management packaging. And I think that product-led development is kind of the same way. Now, product-led development, unfortunately, it's got a lot of good stuff in it too, or let me say a lot of common practice in it, stuff that we find in Agile. But I'm starting, as I get older and have more experience with Agile, to really be scared of Agile. There's some really fundamental problems in Agile. And I want to revisit some of those today. I've been talking about those at these conferences as well. So what does product-led development mean? It's a buzzword. It comes from a guy in the UK. It's focused on good human-computer interactions. So it's a lot about testing. Where's Michael? Is Michael here yet? Okay. Well, the other thing I was going to mention in my introduction, I mean, you're all great, but I also have the honor of being in the company of really, really great colleagues. And Michael and I have been trying to get together for years and years and years, and now we're finally sitting across from each other at the table most nights. And we still haven't found anything really great to disagree about and rip each other's lungs out. But, there's, I have few gods in my constellation, people who I kind of worship. But if there's any, I think Michael is kind of one of them. And you're very, very lucky to have him in here as a speaker. So pay very careful attention, except he's talking about except he's talking about AI. I don't know what that's about. What a bunch of rubbish. So product-centric is developing innovation for its own sake. And I don't think we have enough innovation in the industry. We're too much, doing what we're told to do. And that's a good thing. And so that's product-centric. Customer-led is honoring customer requirements. We'll talk about that. Sales-led is focusing on the business negotiation. And this isn't about what's called freemiums. I mean, some of the people who talk about product-led development talk about freemiums. And, offering you little things that, okay, you can try this out for free, and if you like it, we'll grow it. And I'm talking about something a little deeper than that. By the way, Michael, I'm going to talk a lot about testing, and you hopefully will get angry. Maybe we'll find something to disagree about. But I think if you wait a little bit, again, you're going to find out we very strongly agree. but I'm going to talk about that. Typical product-led strategies: build it and they will come. Okay? So we're going to have the product lead the market rather than responding to to someone coming and asking us to do things. Having free trials, frequent releases, feature definition by product teams, and product discovery through prototyping and things like that. I mean, a lot of these things sound like Agile. Now, I want to underscore some of the fundamental problems with product-led, and some of them are things we find in Agile. How many Scrum people here? Oh, really? Not many who are just you're using Scrum? Or something called Scrum? So I went on the web and I looked up these diagrams of the Scrum process, and they all look like this. What's wrong with these? Anyone see what's wrong with these? No, the problem is it doesn't go in circles. This is water scrum or scrum fall. We start with specs, we just do a bunch of stuff, and we come to an end. Where's the feedback loop? And so, I mean, all the people who are out there selling Scrum are thinking kind of in waterfall terms. And at sprint review, you hold a gun to the end user's head and say, here's a sprint demo. Do you accept this or not? And they accept the output or they don't. Success is about outcomes, not output. So if you're focusing on the product, you're focused on the output. Software is never a product. If I have software on a CD and I give this to you, it's worthless. It doesn't have value until it's put into a computer and is running and interacting with the end user process. So what you are delivering is a process. What are you delivering? Changes to the end user process. And you want to see if value increases there. If it's faster, cheaper, generates more value, easier to use, more productive. This is what you should be evaluating, not evaluating what you have at sprint review. So that's kind of the foundation of a lot of the other bones I want to pick. So a lot of this is based on this model of Scrum, which I've been using in my teaching for 17 years, which is an unchanged picture, which has this full feedback loop. And so it isn't just checking off the boxes at sprint review, but it's interacting with end users. Now, this is something called user experience. And I told you that product-led development is about human-computer interaction. And yeah, that's important. I mean, Jeff Raskin, the founder of the Macintosh product, said the interface is the product. The code is just the crap that goes along with the interface to make the interface work. But the interface is the product. And so, if you're not a UX person, particularly if you're a product owner, you probably shouldn't be let near a computer to develop product for someone else, because you really don't know what you're doing. This is about understanding the end user's workflow, their process. You're delivering a process. And so if you go back to product-led development, ooh, I'm a nerd. There's a product, I can test it, right? Now we're going to talk a lot about testing. Yeah, I woke up Michael. So I mean, product-led development is kind of a sloppy collection of a few good ideas and then some dangerous ones. There is some good stuff in product-led development, I have to say. Marty Kagan is the guy who's kind of championing this, and he's not an idiot. I have a lot of respect for Marty. But it does have some problems. There's more end-user contact. It's based on problem solving and on outcomes, but inherits most of the problems of Agile, and it adds some problems that Scrum doesn't have. So one of the things is they test the interface, right? So we're going to run exercises with end users. And what I mean by testing here is we're going to set end users in front of this and say, okay, here's a product. And now we're going to observe you and watch how you use it, okay? Are you using it effectively? And so what are we evaluating? We're evaluating whether, whether there's a match between the product we deliver and what your needs are. That's what the theory is, right? Now, in fact, if you look at this psychologically, there's something else going on. Let me introduce you to my wife, Gertrude. So Gertrude just got her driver's license. So she's kind of a late blooming teenager. And she passed her driver's test on the first time. And here she is, she's just finished her driver's test and taking the test. So what is a driver's test? And of course, there are a lot of practice tests you can take, but the driver's test makes sure that you have the abilities to go out and drive in a way that's compliant with the laws, and you're not going to hit anyone, and with the laws of physics and all these other things about cars, right? It's a test. No. If I'm doing a user test with him, particularly if I have practice tests, tests test taking. Tests teach. So a test changes the behavior of the thing you're testing. This is kind of like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You can't measure something without changing its behavior. And particularly the way that we do end-user testing in software. And we believe that we're objectively evaluating the software to see if it's going to meet the end-user need. No, what you're doing is you're changing the mind of the end user. You're training the end user to use your product. Now, the same is true for software testing. And this is something that Michael and I can talk about at dinner tonight. Software tests train the software. The software bends in order to reflect what's in the test. So, we have this illusion of objectivity, that tests are somehow absolute. I think that is to misunderstand testing, but I think a lot of people come with that perspective. And no, tests teach the software. Tests teach our end users. Now, product-based development is based on testing the end user against the product, okay, because we want to evolve the product. Agile is the same way. The way that Agile works is we start with some understanding of user pain. Now, users do understand their pain. They know they're in pain. This is very, low level on the level of consciousness. And they report it as a symptom. Well, we never explore the pain. We pick up the symptoms. And the symptom gets delivered as a customer-reported ticket, a customer-reported problem. And now we come up with some new solution to that problem. Software development should be all about problem solving. And now we test. And we ask, did the test pass? If it doesn't, what's wrong? It was the wrong solution, right? Everyone understand that? How many people understand that? We've delivered the wrong solution, right? Is that true? Well, first of all, there's a couple of problems with this. Okay, let's say we really are not, we don't have this intermediate step, and we are just, focusing on the symptom. We deliver a solution, we test, and we evaluate. And now, we tweak the solution. We keep refining. But it's the same solution. Okay, we had a problem in the solution. What if you were solving the wrong problem? So, instead of just iterating on the solution, what a good process should be is not product research, it's process research into the end user process. That's what we're trying to fix, right? And instead of a symptom, we want to find a problem. A problem is the difference between the current state and the desired state. It's not a requirement. For you Scrum people, there are no requirements in Scrum. There are no user stories in Scrum. And this isn't accidental. The nice thing about requirements is they're very rarely required. Okay? And now, we're gonna have a process where we'll have a new solution, we test it, and if it doesn't work, maybe we should be solving another problem. But we're in the engineer space. We can't control the problems. And, we're not talking to these end users, so we don't appreciate what the problems are. We can control the solutions. So we keep refactoring, points for buzzwords, refactoring to make that green bar come up to make sure that our solution fits, what the end user needs. We never stop and think, I may be solving the wrong problem. I do a lot of work with Toyota. I do a lot of work in Japan. This is how the Japanese think. This is the Japanese development process. So instead of just coming back and forging forward and keep trying to move that big rock, we go around the rock. We define a new problem. So this should be part of your method and part of your way of working. Product-led development is always moving forward to that product because it's missing the starting state of focusing on the process. And you're saying, well, I need to build a product because I have requirements from end users. End users don't know anything about what they need. They understand their pain. But I have a lot of quotes here from talking heads. Steve Jobs says, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Henry Ford said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Phil Lieben, this is the best one, says, customer feedback is great for telling you what you did wrong. It's terrible at telling you what you should do next. This conference is about what comes next. Does your end user have a crystal ball? We don't know what comes next in a complex world. I come from Denmark. We had a physicist named Niels Bohr. And Niels Bohr said, be careful about predicting things, particularly if they involve the future. So, end user requirements and feedback are terrible for driving a process. What you need is a dutiful study and due diligence for understanding that process with good analysis to understand how can I change that process or accelerate that process in a way that's going to add value. End users don't understand that. They don't have time to do these kind of studies and analyses and this kind of thinking. This is your job. And it's part of your job to help working with those users to define the problem. Now, we define a problem, we just solve it, right? Okay, well, so we can solve this with, how many of you know root cause analysis? Or 5 whys. You have a problem. Why? You answer. And I say, why? You answer. And after 5 times, you should get to the root cause. And now we solve that, right? Does a problem in a complex adaptive system have a root cause? What was the root cause of the weather on Sunday? This is bullshit. You say, it's very Japanese. The Japanese came and unloaded a whole bunch of lies to Detroit so Japan would maintain a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And Detroit loved it, and they ate it up. And it even got a name. It was called Lean. Lean is full of lies that the Japanese delivered to Detroit in order to mislead them and maintain a competitive advantage. I can show you the quote from Taiichi Ono from Toyota where he says, it was my job to tell them as little as possible and to confuse them, and I think I did a good job. So if you're into the lean thing, boy, have they really fooled you. The reason this is a problem, do you have this little ditty in Romanian culture? This, I think, originally comes from German culture, and I find it in Nordic culture, and American culture, and English culture. So Liza and her husband Henry, Liza wants some water and says, Henry, go get some water. And Henry says, there's a hole in the bucket. Well, fix it, dear Henry. Well, how shall I fix it, Liza? With a stick, dear Henry. Well, the stick is too long. Well, how shall I cut it? With an axe, dear Henry. Cut it to size. The hatchet is too dull. Sharpen it with a stone. The stone is too dry. Wet it. How do I wet it? I wet it with water. How do I get water with the bucket? There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. Where's the root cause? This is how complex problems work. I fix this problem by cutting the loop. There's no bottom. But we in the Western world tend to believe in hierarchies and causality and all kinds of other lies. And in product-led development, of course, we're trying to iterate that product and converge on something that's at that bottom where we finally can reach and say we're done. I mean, you're never done. Because changing that product changes the world. In terms of root cause analysis, I went looking on the web, and this is an authoritative site that talks about root cause analysis and 5 whys. It gives this example. Why are customers dissatisfied? Because the spec for the products was wrong. Well, why was the spec wrong? Because an error occurred when the specs were written down by the salesperson. Well, why did that happen? Because the form requires the sales director's approval before work can begin, and that slows down the process. Well, why does this contain an approval line for the sales director? Because the sales director needs to be continuously updated on sales for discussion with the CEO. And that's the root cause. Right? Or, is that the root cause? Well, why does the sales director need to be continuously updated on sales? Because sales have dropped because customers receive a product that was different than what they expected. Oops. You see, fixing that root cause isn't going to change anything. It's a complex system. And as Ed Jordan said, all things are deeply intertwinkled. So this is not about method. It's not about a step-by-step process that you can follow to solve problems. Solving problems is a social activity of groups in communication, doing crazy things, doing divergent thinking, doing innovation. And it doesn't come from this kind of focus on building a product and working to specs. Now, in order to do this, in order to go into the end-user process and understand the end-user workflow, this is called user experience, or UX. And this is different than human-computer interaction, which is just about the interface and the buttons and how they're laid out and interaction times and things like that. It's very expensive. And so if you go out and you want to survey your market and make models, it's probably tens of thousands of euros. Now, there are cheaper ways of doing this, like using Persona. But I mean, to do this right does require an investment. But doing it on the cheap means, you know, your competitor is going to beat you up silly. So in Denmark, we have a guy named Jakob Nielsen who's kind of pioneered this idea of user profiles. And you want to profile your market in great detail. Okay, the second thing, responsive iterative design is evil. And I talked about this at one of the other CodeCamp conferences. So if I look at the book, you know, for this product-led development, it says, the companies that work in the product operating model build products using small, frequent, and reliable releases, usually at a minimum of once every 2 weeks, but ideally continuously, CI/CD. How many of you are Microsoft users, you know, or have been for many, many years? And the dancing paperclip would come up and say, wow, we have a new download for you. You have to stop working. We're going to download and install this new thing. And you come back an hour and a half later. Aren't you so happy to have that continuous integration and the continuous delivery to you? Wow, I get something new. I mean, this sucks. So, I mean, the Agile people are all about continuous delivery. I was once teaching a class and saying, you know, how many of you use Scrum? And this woman says, yeah, we use Scrum. It's so great because I get to push away the stuff that is finished and move on to something new. I can forget this stuff. No! I mean, your end user's now using it. You should be paying attention to them and helping them and make sure that this works and that the new stuff works with the old stuff. So the goal is not frequent releases. That isn't the goal. The goal is value. And sometimes frequent releases will help that. There's a lot of other ways of getting feedback. And one of the main problems with Agile is it's gone too far in one direction. Mary Poppendieck talks about the pendulum of software engineering. And she says it doesn't swing, it slams from one side to the other. And so there are two aspects for getting input. One is called feed forward, and the other is called feedback. How many of you have feed forward activities in your development process? That is, you're going out and you're studying end users. Your product owner lives with the end users. She's down on the Gemba. She lives, eats, and sleeps with them. And that is going to be an opportunity for feed forward to drive your product in the right direction. But it starts with understanding the end user process. That's feed forward. Feedback is, well, with a hope and a prayer, we'll dump some product out there, and then we refactor and iterate. And what you end up with is you end up working at a local optimum. So, I mean, if you do mountain climbing, you're at the base of the mountain, and you can say, here's this nice shallow slope, and there's a cliff in front of me. I'm an Agile person. I'm going to inspect and adapt. Well, I obviously take the shallow slope based on a local decision. Agile decisions are local decisions. Don't plan into the future. You ain't gonna need it. Yagni. This is one of the key words of Agile people. You ain't gonna need it. Don't think. Do. What's Agile? Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. People interacting, collaborating, building, doing. There is no thinking in Agile. Show me. Are you the new India? Or are you going to think and build great products? See the difference? One is about understanding a product. Anyone can build a product. Understanding end user processes is about understanding people. That's individuals and interactions. So the problem here is that, again, product-led development says, we're going to build frequent and small releases. The problem is the decisions are always local, and you end up with a local optimum. So you need key ideas like architecture, planning, good upfront analysis, great specs. Agile is just for the stupid stuff that you missed. So in some sense, I view testing as a safety net. Testing in theory should be unnecessary. If a test fails, what's the problem? It's a problem in your development process. It shows up in the product, but we all like to focus on product-led development and say the problem is in the product. Well, why? Because we can, and engineers can fix that. They can edit code. No, why is the problem in the product? Because something in the process missed that. Now, there's some really fundamental things that are really, really hard to avoid. Software is complex. And with some essential complexity, there's always going to be bugs. But you need to think about fixing the process. Taiichi Ohno of Toyota said, build the right process, and you will build the right product. So this isn't about just examining the product. This is having a bigger picture of a larger ecosystem and using that to move forward. And this isn't about, refactoring. And in terms of testing end user interfaces, one of the things that I just found on LinkedIn is if you're developing an end user interface, you should use rapid iteration and have a continuous feedback from your end users. This is the worst interface you can possibly build because effective user interfaces are built on habit formation. And if you change that interface, once end users have used it, you make it unusable. And you're saying, no, I can learn a new interface. Oh, yeah? What if I change the layout of the keys on your keyboard? Could you use it? How long would it take you to learn that? There's a wonderful video on YouTube about a guy who went to his friend who was a welder and had him change the bicycle so when I turned the handles left, the wheel went right. And of course, he couldn't ride the bicycle until after a month. And then he could ride the bicycle. And then he couldn't ride an ordinary bicycle anymore. Now, his son learned it in 2 days, his 4-year-old son. Good user experience is about habit formation. And testing that and iterating on it is unbelievably destructive. This is about planning things up front and having the right interface out of the gate. Don't change your interfaces. And I know this is against everything you heard about Agile. But if you talk to real UX people or real, psychologists who understand the psychology of cognition, they'll tell you this is a sound principle of software design. I'll very quickly go over this. Prototypes are a good way to iterate with your end users to evaluate. And there's kind of 2 paths to prototyping. One is to do market analysis and do full product deployment and deploy it. And Toyota did this with something called the Toyota van. I owned one of these, 1967 Toyota van, probably the best vehicle I ever owned. But it was a prototype built by Toyota. It was only out there for 3 years, and they used it to evaluate front-wheel drive vans in the marketplace. And then they stopped building it, and they used the feedback. They completely scrapped this thing, and they went on and built the Toyota Previa from the ground up, built based on the feedback they got. So that's one approach. Very, very costly, but Toyota felt it was worth it. The other approach, kind of the Agile approach, is you start with a minimal viable product, which is absolutely ridiculous because they're not minimal, they're not viable, and they're not a product. And then you deploy it, and you iterate, and compromise, and deploy, iterate. And this is the climbing the mountain and taking what you think is the minimal path, not knowing that there's even a bigger cliff at the end of that path. And you need to be making more global decisions. Both of these are wrong. And what you find, you can't trust designers. Designers are just accelerated craft. Okay? So what you find that the companies like Google or Toyota or so forth are using is something called set-based design. So for each part of our system, let's consider some alternatives. So let's say, we have the Windows part and the database part and the language part. Well, okay, we have some alternatives. And, we don't have any information to know what's best. And what we do is we formulate some questions that we want to answer to evaluate whether these things are good. And we start with a very small number of evaluation criteria. Is there a good market fit? Are people going to be able to accept something that's written in Linux? Are the compatibility issues if we use a Sybase database? What is the cost of these programming languages? And now I develop all of them. I develop not the whole thing, but I develop just far enough that have understanding about what the losers are. And so now I can get rid of things that just aren't going to work out. Okay, Linux, Windows aren't going to work out. It's going to be Mac. Oh, maybe iOS. There's a new one. I introduced new alternatives. Sybase didn't work out. I added MySQL. And now I do the same thing. I ask questions, and this time I'm asking a few more questions. I'm getting into more detail. Do the development far enough to understand what doesn't work, and I keep doing this until, in the end, I have product. But all of this evaluation is done with end users, with prototypes, with feedback. But I don't go live into the market until here. And so this is how Toyota develops and builds cars. This is how Google develops and builds all new software products. And you can buy books on this. There's something called design sprints. There's a book on design sprints that you can get that describes this process for how Google does it. So on each iteration, what we're doing is we're decreasing the number of alternatives, but we're increasing the options. And eventually we get down to one. So instead of doing iteration, instead of keep trying to move that rock, Instead, what we're going to do is smooth out flow. And that may mean redefining the problem. In the Toyota production system, this is called Heiyunka. And so I want to smooth out flow. And I'd like to go into this into more detail, but it's very non-Western. It would take me a while to explain it. But you can find this on the web. Study this up. Process really has value over product. Products are just a crutch. So the vendor and client together develop a system solution that should support rather than replace the existing process. You never replace a human process, or very, very rarely, because humans have been good at optimizing these things over the years. And for you to come in 2 weeks and think up a new process that's going to be better than what has been optimized over 100 years is very unlikely. So good UX supports the process that is there. It does not replace it. And the final solution is the process. The product is just a crutch. So clients might know the goal, or they know what pain they want to have go away, but they also have the capacity to say, do something else. Let's try solving another problem and see if that gives us the value. And emphasizing product de-emphasizes the real goal. The goal is not to deliver this set of requirements. The goal is to make the pain go away. How do I know? I measure. Has the pain gone away? Not, I have met this requirement. But we have this belief, this very strong belief, that meeting the requirement is the same as making the pain go away. It's not. And this is one of the reasons that testing is so important. Again, I'm setting up Michael here. Because we have these beliefs and misconceptions about the world, and we feel we know everything. We have in those requirements. No, measure, measure, measure. The Japanese say go down in the gemba, down in the real end-user workplace. You got to be down there feeling their pain, really understanding what's going on. Not working at the end of some user story or some garbage coming out of Jira, that some idiot has put there because he wants his promotion, right? So product-led development is based on a customer-centric product vision, a strong, compelling product vision that is customer-focused. The product vision describes the future the company is trying to create. Anyone working on a product like that? Can you name this for your product? This is a nice myth. It's a nice abstract hope. And by the way, customer, I don't give a damn about customers. Who I care about are end users. Look it up in a dictionary. The customer is the one who pays for the product. It has nothing to do with using the product. Agile is about customer collaboration. I don't care about the customer. I care about the end user. That's where the action is. That's where the process is, not with the business person from marketing who's buying my product. But if I look at product-led development, it's all about sales. Who can I sell to? Well, that marketing person and my client. And after all, I need to eat, I need to survive, I need to make money, I need to sell these things. I don't care if it works. That's product-led development. So who does this? Well, maybe Toyota. We specify the product, right? No, Taiichi Ohno said, build the right process, and you'll build the right product. And here's my wife's car. And this is a significant iteration over the 2023 model. A lot of improvements. I mean, the trade press reviews have no flaws in this thing. The 2023 trade press reviews have a lot of problems with this, and they fix them. So test value and outcomes rather than outputs. Now, these are difficult to manage and predict. And experiments are great, but they're almost impossible to run for outcomes. A real experiment with a hypothesis, and experimental variables, a control, and experimental, and publication. So if you do rapid change, according to product-led development, you get this tail whip effect. So rather than waiting for the feedback to tell you what way to go, you should use domain knowledge, because almost every switching system has the same major components. Every telecommunication system has the same major components. Every banking system has the same major components. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Use domain knowledge. and encode that in your software. And this happens down on the Gemba. This book is by a guy named Kobata-san. He was founder and CEO of a company called Denso. And as CEO, he would go down on the Gemba and watch the people at the lathes and the grinders and the drills and just stand there and watch them. And then ask them questions. And then make some suggestions. He's the CEO, for crying out loud. Being in contact with reality is important. No reports. Daily Scrum is not status reporting. We don't report status. We measure the product. Is this working? Is this not? And now on the outcome, look at the end user process. So if I look at what product-led development says that we want, again, it's customer-focused. I don't care about customers. I care about end users. It's valuable. The customer will buy or choose to use it. So the goal is that they buy it, not that the end user recognize value. It's usable. I love this statement. The user will be able to figure out how to use it. Wow, there's a strong statement. There's something. There are rules to live by. Okay, they'll figure it out. It's feasible. The engineers know. Oh, the engineers, that's my people, right? Okay, I'm focused on the engineers. Agile is the nerd's revenge. And we keep saying, okay, we're market focused. Well, you're customer focused, but you're not end user focused. And they'll know how to solve it with time, technology, and so forth. And it's viable. The solution will work for the business. Yes, this is about the business. By the way, what is this thing called the business? I mean, is that a separate organization in your company? Is it a department? What is this thing called the business? Everyone says, well, the business asked us to do this. Well, what is this? Who is this person called the business? I have no idea what this thing is. But we have to have someone to blame. Value is an emergent property of the feature set. So, we love to test our individual features and say, okay, well, all these features work, so therefore we have value. Now, you should test features, of course, because, we do make mistakes. Some of these are going to be inevitable, and we want to make sure that, we're delivering what we intended to deliver. But even if we deliver what we intended to deliver, it's not a guarantee of value, because every feature builds on every other feature. I mean, think of a car, or even more so a motorcycle. How many of you drive motorcycles? I mean, this is it's amazing what's going on in the human mind to coordinate your left foot and your right foot and the operations of the left hand and the right hand. I mean, all of your limbs are busy doing all this crazy stuff. But if you drive a motorcycle, it just becomes habit. So, you're not going to make someone a better motorcycle driver by teaching them how more effectively to touch the brake. I mean, you've got to be all of these things together. It's like baking a cake. I mean, a cake is a result of all the ingredients and of some process by which they come to be a cake. Now, prototypes can help you evaluate this, but they're too often developed in isolation and get very, very narrow feedback. And so all you can do is build that product according to your understanding of the process. It's the understanding of the process that's important. Testing a house, what are they testing it for? Earthquake resilience. That's an outcome. I want to build this house so that it's earthquake resistant, and they're actually testing this thing. Now, software is a whole lot more complex than a house, even. You put this kind of effort into testing? And if you do you think that everything is okay? So there's kind of two edges to this sword, as is true for most of the swords in history. That, testing is really important, but to just hang a laurel on testing and to say, the product is doing what we expected it to do, you're a long way from done. This thing has to hit the ground running, and you have to actually evaluate what's going on in that end user process. And this isn't about a list of things to do, a list of tests to run, a list of processes to follow. This is not about what you do. This is about who you are. This is about being, not doing. So product-based development is based on figuring out what problem to solve. These are called requirements, right? Well, what we know from Agile is that, what you think is a requirement is probably not going to be a requirement at all in the end. And the iteration is going to make that possible. So a big part of being is having the domain knowledge. And the talk I gave when I was here last time, Twitter just fired 90% of its staff, about 2 years ago. Who are they firing? The typists, or the people who can only do Angular, or can only do C++, or no, I want to hire a professional, and it doesn't matter what programming language you're using. They're going to be able to learn it in 2 or 3 days because they're a professional. This is about being. I have the raw, deep knowledge to be able to be flexible and to follow any process that someone gives to me. Okay? So features about product differentiation, and that's good too, but you still need to have these be attentive to the basics to support that end user process. I gave a talk very much like this to some consultants who are working with the Danish government to work on the property tax system, and I told them a story about my next door neighbor. This is really true. They're looking at the property evaluations, and it's not even AI. Okay, it's just plain old software. And the evaluation of her property that was used for tax was, I think, what was it? About 4 million kroner. And after they put in this program, it went to 81 million kroner. Right? Because, the program is stupid. The program doesn't know what the zoning laws are, what the ecological protections are. That in fact you can't build on this space. It has very low value for the purpose of tax appreciation. So you really need to look at that end user space and understand it very well to do the right thing. And it's not a list of requirements. So what do I do instead? There's no silver bullet. But generous professional UX research. This is research. Going out there and understanding the end user workflow. Like Nielsen's customer profiles. Be a professional UXer. Every product owner should be a professional UXer. Think in terms of delivering a process to your end user. The product is just part of that. When you deliver your thing, do you also deliver training, consulting, documentation? These are part of supporting that process. Or are you just focused on what comes out of the link editor and that part of the software? No, you're supporting a process. This is much broader than just shipping a piece of software, shipping a tool. How about the training? How about the consulting? How about the documentation? How about the help desk? Are these product backlog items in your sprint? You want to support that full process. And the product just plays a supporting role. Observe and design as an expert rather than co-developing with end users. Now, you do want a close link with end users. They're going to give you useful information, and especially their pain. But you are the one who's in the position to do this exhaustive, thorough, laborious study and research. The end users aren't. And so they're going to give you information. But coming up with the requirements or the direction of the product is your job as a developer. You can't just go to the end users and say, tell me what to do, Daddy. And one of my concerns about Romania right now is a lot of you who are building software are in the position where Daddy is telling you what to do. There's no substitute for a system of profound knowledge. You don't know what you're doing. You're just doing what you're told. Now, you can fix this. You can start talking to end users. I want you to fix this. I have a vision of you fixing this. You can do this. Okay? You set-based design like I talked about. Design your architecture based on domain knowledge rather than based on use cases. Use cases have nothing to do with architecture. Architecture is not related to requirements. It's due to long-term domain knowledge. There's a building, a large complex in San Francisco, which was built as a cannery for canning vegetables. And there were requirements for building that factory. Today, it's a shopping center that was built according to the requirements for canning vegetables. Architecture does not have to do with requirements. It's something else. It's domain knowledge about what makes us essentially human. Plan longitudinally beyond the now. Do future-perfect thinking. Think in the future. And, of course, heed dimensions such as maintainability and architecture. And even think bigger. Don't empirically iterate into a local optimum. Don't get caught in the Agile trap. Instead, we're going to do what are called transitions, where we, redefine the problem and move ahead in large quanta steps and really add value. All progress depends on the unreasonable man. You should be trying radical ideas that maybe have a 90% chance of not working, but if they work, the value will save humanity. These are the kind of problems you should be solving. What are you doing to solve the energy crisis problem? If we're going to meet the energy needs of all this AI crap computing that's going on, by 2028, you have to build one solar windmill and install it every hour between now and then. That's the problem you should be solving. That's a problem of humanity. Think big. How can you do things with less computing power? How can you do things more efficiently? So product-led design inherits most of the problems of Agile. We should be scientists. There's the old joke, how do you know computer science is not a science? Right? Computer science is not a science. How do you know something is not a science? It has science in its name. Computer science, sanitary science, physics. Now there's a science. Right? Chemistry, there's a science, right? Computer science is not a science. We should be scientists. We should be doing experiments. We should be evaluating. Responsible value is anchored far out in the value stream, in our end user outcome, and in the future of humanity, not just in the product that shows up at the end of the sprint. Thank you very much.